Okay, so today we're going to do a bit of code along, and we're going to use the Move Mini, and we're going to make it so it will move around and stop and turn and possibly move backwards when it comes into an obstruction. So we've got the robot here. Now, obviously, we're going to use the extensions. There's loads of different robots you can get for the microbit, and lots of them that have sort of ultrasonic add-ons, and that's the sensor there. And this, we'll put it in a minute, goes here in the front. And we've got a microbit, it's version 2. We can tell that we've got the gold outline here and the notched strip down at the bottom. Version 1 would work fine. Here, though, we could have it triggered by audio as well. But in terms of putting it together, we take the ultrasonic sensor and we're going to stick it in the front so it's facing out, so it looks a bit like a set of eyes. And then we're going to take the microbit and we're going to put it in there so it's good to go. Also made sure underneath batteries are already in and they're charged, it's ready to go. But we've got it turned off at the moment so it doesn't automatically start doing things. So I'll put that down there. I'm going to work on getting the code set up. And the first thing we're going to do is set up the distance sensor. So we've got it measuring the distance and displaying it on the screen at the front of the microbit. So here we are, we're in the editor. The Move Motor extension's already in here. If you haven't got it in, click Extensions, just type Move in at the top, and it's the first one there. So I'm going to go back. So we're going to set up the distance sensor first, so we know that's working, then that's that problem dealt with. We don't need to worry about, is it reading the distance right? So we go to Basic, use Forever. If your Forever block's already there, it's fine. You're going to need a variable. Feel free to pause this as you go if you need to sort of just slow it down and keep up. And I go to Variables. I've made my variable already, but that's simply a case of make variable, type the name in, and then I want to set dist to, because I call my dist short for distance. So set dist to, and go to the Move Motor, Sensors, Measure Distance, and that goes in there. So now it's constantly going round and it's measuring the distance and it's putting in that variable. What we need to do now is to set up the code so we can just view what it is to make sure it's working right. So from Basic, we're going to get show number. We're going to put that in there and variable, put distance in there. Now, whilst that might look right, actually, what we need to do is tell it what it's measuring the distance in. So we're going to need on start as well. And this is a bit that only runs once. This is a bit of our setup for it, which is why we put it in on start, not forever, because we don't need it to constantly run. It just needs to show. So we go Move Motor, we go back to Sensors, Measure Distance in, and we want it in centimeters, because that's what we're going to work to. So those are our first two. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that on the robot now, and we're going to check that the distance sensor is actually working. But we can see here, at least it is displaying numbers, but we can't manipulate this value through here. Right, so my microbit is now connected. So we've got the lead on, we can see the light on, so it's connected, and it's been paired. So we've got the little logo here. So we're going to put this code onto here. We're going to click download, and this is going to run. It's going nice and quickly. Now we're going to look and see how it is. Now, what we should see on the screen is a distance of about 13 to 14 centimeters when I turn this up. And we put it on once we turn it on. So we put it up, saying about, it goes through 15 centimeters, which is about right, because you've got a slight variation in the distance. If I pick it up, move it closer, every time it refreshes, it's now showing 8, 9, 7, 6, as it gets closer. And I measured this previously. You could always put a ruler on a desk, and then you could put an obstacle in front of it to check that it's working. But that's working fine, so we know it's reading the distance. So now we can move on to start programming it so it's moving around. Okay, so quickly, first thing we're going to do, and we're going to have this work just by pressing the button, so we're triggering it so it doesn't just start moving. We're just going to make sure the motors are working, so we can have it just move forwards and backwards, only a small amount on the desk because I don't want it falling off. Just to check that the motors are running and all of that sort of elements in it are correct. So we're going to move motor, we go to motors, and we're just going to use this top one here, this move forward at speed. So I'll put that in there, move forward at speed, and I'm going to put it to 40% of its speed. It's going to move forward, and we'll have it move for about half a second. And then we're going to have it move backwards. So I'm going to duplicate that block. Guess we've got, and I'll put reverse in there. And then I'm going to have the pause. And more importantly than anything else here now, I've got to tell it to stop. Otherwise, it's actually just going to keep moving backwards. So we're going to put stop, and we've got to have this stop at the end there. So the code is on here now. I've already flashed it. We can see it's turned on. The distance sensor code is running on the front as well, because we see it scrolling across on the microbit. So all I need to do is now, if I press A, it should move forward and then move backwards, which it did. So now that's working. So that's fine. So now we'll start setting up the condition. This is going to be our if statement that's going to make it do things depending on the distance that we read from the sensor at the front. So we know it moves, we know it's measuring the distance, right? So we're still going to have our code all triggered when we press the A button, because we don't want it running all over the place. So the first thing to do is to get rid of all of that on there. And we start, quite simply, we use an if statement from the beginning. And I'm going to get the if-else block. I'm going to put it in there, and I'm going to click the plus, because we're going to need these conditions. We'll leave this here for now, because we might need it. Or what we could do is we could put a stop in there to stop it running away if neither of these get met. But we have our condition, and we want to think about the distance and how far it is. And we're going to use about 4 centimeters in this. So we'll wait here for a moment, let you get caught up so you can get these blocks in, and then we'll... So now we're going to build our condition that's going to make it move forward. So we've got if, and we're going to go to logic, and we're doing a comparison here, because comparing is something is greater than something. So I'm going to take the top one. You can take either of these two, because we're going to change the operator that's in the middle. This bottom one here, though, is set up to look at text, so we don't want this one. So I'm going to take the top one, I'm going to drop it in there. And because I know I'm going to be using it later, I'm actually going to drop another one in there just for now. First thing is we want to set it greater to, or greater than or equal to, which is this bottom one with a line underneath it here. So we're comparing our variable, and our variable is distance. So we go to variables. Our variables are here because we want to use this oval shaped block. So we're not changing it. We're not setting it to anything. We want to use whatever value is stored in it. So distance, and that goes in there. And it is also going to go into here as well. So to save us having to sort of move things later, we can put it in there. So if distance is greater than or equal to 4, then motors move forward at speed, and we'll keep it a bit like we did, so it's not running out of control. I think 40. And that's first bit. So that's the first bit you need to do. So we'll pause here and let you catch up with that. So right now, what we want it to do is, if this value is actually less than 4, we want the robot to stop, and that's what we're going to do. So in order to stop it doing anything else when we test it, we're going to get rid of this else block. So by clicking on that minus there, because we want it to only do one of these two things. So else, if distance is less than 4, then motors stop. So we're going to flash this onto the robot now, and we're going to test that it works at this point. Right, so we've got the move motor, code's flashed on it, distance sensor is judging sort of distance, we can see it's working, and the code is flashed on it. So we're going to see if that code we've written is actually going to work. And it's set up, so really here, so we see this box is roughly about 20 centimeters away from the front. So when we get to roughly here, so the 15, 16 centimeter mark, it should stop, because it's measuring temperature, distance, and we set it to move. So I've turned it on, press the A button, and as we can see, it goes, but it didn't stop. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to code, and we'll look at some of the common misconceptions that happen when you write a distance code, and why it's really important to think about where you put it and the sequencing of your code to make sure that it actually does what you intend. Right, so back to our code. So what went wrong? So all of the correct pieces that are needed for your code are actually here. The issue lies in how we've got things sequenced. And when we think about programming, we think about sequencing, selection, and iteration, which is where things repeat. And selection is here. Now, this is correct. The structure here is correct, and it's sequenced correctly. If the distance is greater than or equal to 4, then move forward. If not, if it's less than 4, then stop. That's right. But it's in the wrong place. And all of this links to the fact that we're measuring the distance up here in forever. It measures it and it stores it in the variable. And when we start the program, that's going on and it's constantly going on. But when we press the A button to start it moving and ask this question, it looks at what the value currently stored in distance is, and it will apply that through this, and it will run it once. So it's not repeating it. That's a loop, and that's like our iteration. And our iterative, or our looping part of our code, is forever here. So one of the first things we need to do is actually take this if statement out of the A button bit and put it into forever. And we're going to get rid of the A button pressed. That goes there. Now, this is going to work. However, when we want it to stop, we're going to want it to stop really straight away. As soon as it's less than that, go in. And where we have show number here, this actually takes a second or so to run before it goes through onto this part here, where we've got our instructions for stopping and so on. So what we have to do is, if we get rid of the show number, we know that works because we tested it earlier. We're left with this nice short piece of code where we're measuring the distance in centimeters and we are setting it into a variable, and then we're comparing it, and this repeats. So we're going to flash this now, and we should see that the actual movement will stop then when its distance from any obstacle, in this case our cardboard box, is less than 4 centimeters. Right, so we're back. We've got the move motor here, we've got the box, obviously we've got the ruler, so we can have a look at how close to the actual distance with the centimeters are. So I'm going to turn it on. It's going to start automatically because all of the code, as you remember from the previous thing, should be inside that forever block. So all being well, it will stop and not push the box off the table. There we go. So we can get the stop, nice sharp stop, and it's stopped there. If I was to just pick it up and move it back, you see the wheels will start again. If I put it forward, it stops. So we can let it go and it will keep going. So I'll just turn that off now. So now we've got that code, it's really down to you. You can use those if statements to make it do something else. So I could have it move forward, and when it gets within it, it can stop and it could turn, try and work out the code to make it turn 90 degrees, and then repeat and move forward again until it stops. You could add some else ones in it. You can now do what you want. It's all about building those conditions within the if statements to program this little robot, or any you've got, because there are a number of different ones that you can put ultrasonic sensors on the front, and it all works in a very similar way. It's just being able to measure that distance and then feed it into a variable, and then through the if statement, the condition, the selection of telling it what to do if certain conditions are met. So if it's greater than this, or if it's less than that, or if it's equal to what it's actually do. So now it's down to you to take that basic piece of code and to develop it into something that you want that could make a robot or something similar like this actually just move around in a seemingly autonomous way.